Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks again for joining us. On the warning chart here, we've got a winter storm warning out for snow here for the northern southeast coast, Haynesboro area, Klondike Highway, Lynn Canal on up to Skagway, White Pass. Look for anywhere from 2 to 14 inches of snow to fall in these areas. Heaviest up toward White Pass, that's where the 14 inches will fall. And this should kick in about 9 p.m., even though southerly winds brought some pretty warm air up into the area, rising to upper 30s to near 40. Snow levels are still on the low side, and so as the next storm approaches, those winds could die off or swing around to the north, and that'd pull the snow levels right back down to near sea level. So that area here that's shaded in red, they'll remain under the influence of that warning till about noontime tomorrow. Otherwise, on the satellite yesterday, again, another system rolling through the southeast coast and then a band back up along the North Gulf Coast here, actually extending back out to low pressure that's still out here over the southern Bering Sea near the Pribilofs. A little bit colder air coming down in the Bering Sea, starting to get wrapped up into that circulation, so the rain changing over to snow there over the Pribilofs and some breaks out here over the southern Bering Sea. A lot of cold temperatures in the interior and several impulses coming southward there onto the north slope from the Arctic. But each one of those pretty starved for moisture as they come down. So really all that's doing is bringing some areas of fog and maybe some very light flurries and low clouds, and then it clears off. Really not much going on up there at all. Winds are on the light side. On today's satellite, you can see up till about midday, we had a front pushing up toward Kodiak. The rain moving in, actually the main rain area right here and southward. All this high cirrus streaming northward out ahead of the main system there, and then rain sliding into the southeast coast, sort of linking up with the other system that had moved through earlier. And there's kind of an Arctic boundary right through this area here, and the main front down here appears to have pushed by Kodiak already, or it's near about to. Winds have died off and the rain changed back to snow, at least at 4 p.m. with a lot of low IFR conditions there, and snow back into the Alaska Peninsula, Sand Point, and over toward Cold Bay. Seeing some snow this afternoon associated with this storm on the back edge there. But mostly clear skies. In fact, looks sunny this afternoon. Nikolsky over to Unalaska, a few clouds there. Temperatures able to edge up into the mid-30s, but up here in the colder area, temperatures in the 20s over the Pribilofs with snow falling the entire day. Some scattered snow showers out over the Aleutians, but nothing too heavy going on out in that area. And we've got the periods of rain going here over the southeast coast. Low pressure at the surface moved into well, north of Skagway, and that allowed those winds to gust up to 40 miles an hour today through Lynn Canal. And on the chart today, you can see Arctic boundary right in this area, 9 a.m. That has shifted to the north since then and may come back to the south here this evening. And Again, that brings the potential for some snow up in that area as all this moisture continues to stream northeastward. You can see the front back here and the moisture overrunning the Arctic boundary there, and so snow has begun at Seldovia. And then we've got areas of rain and snow showing up over Prince William Sound. Valdez starting to pick up some snow late this afternoon. Rain and snow, Whittier, snow and Portage, winds picking up there, but temperatures above freezing, and some moisture has worked into the Cordova area. Yakutat had a little bit of freezing rain earlier on. For tonight, band of snow up here in the north. Keep those gusty winds going around the Eagle area. They saw gusts up to about 15 to 30 miles an hour today. They'll probably continue into this evening. Maybe areas along the eastern Alaska range, you'll see some gusty winds as well. This front bringing more moisture up to the north. Mostly this evening, that's when you'll see the strongest winds here along the southeast coast. Gale force winds all the way down into Dixon Entrance with that front, with rain heavy at times over the central and southern areas, mixing with snow as you get up to the north. Low center here right near Kodiak Island tonight. No change out here over the Bering Sea, still snow showers, some of those heavier than others, and that'll probably begin to slip some more moisture down into the eastern Aleutians, especially out with this low toward Adak and Atka. And then for tomorrow, that low weakens here and slides right up over Cook Inlet, and another system actually develops and strengthens as it moves eastward here into the southeast coast. That will pull north of the border there. So look for those winds again in the afternoon to switch around to the south through Lincoln Island Glacier Bay and pull the warmer air northward, and that will change the snow over to rain once that happens. And then the main front having pushed through midday tomorrow, so by the afternoon some pretty brisk southwesterly gales, or 25 to 40 knots, give or take, here along the coast and offshore in a diminishing mode during the afternoon hours, with scattered showers or showers scattering out and becoming less frequent as well. Not too bad here. Northeast winds, dry over the southwest coast, dry up on the eastern Arctic coast as a kind of a southwest wind pattern tries to develop ahead of this trough. Back out to the west will bring a chance of snow and definitely lower flying conditions to the western Arctic coast there, back down into the Bering Strait. So looking at winds gusting 35 to 40 miles an hour even tomorrow through the Bering Strait, coming down across St. Lawrence Island area, a little bit lighter there, but no heavy wind or precipitation at all here over the Bering Sea or the Aleutians, just those scattered snow showers of that persistent low near the central areas. And then for Wednesday, yet another system comes northward here. This is just the remnants of the first one that comes northward. Also another Arctic front coming down from the north. So see a boundary right through the interior for a chance of some light snow along that feature there over into the main low center there just northeast of Eagle. Dry here to the south of that, dry to the north. Still those troughs bringing some periods of clouds and flurries into the Arctic coast. And looks like more wind and rain, more likely rain, and possibly gale force or small craft advisory level winds coming in ahead of this warm front along the North Gulf Coast. A little bit brisker down across Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula areas, and more moisture begins to stream in back into the southeast coast as this high pressure moves over the area Tuesday night behind that original storm, and then is already moving out of the area on Wednesday afternoon. That'll just open the door for some more rain to move in. Could be an area of mixed precipitation on the leading edge of the moisture field as it pushes onshore, but a lot of warm air coming up with this system, so not looking for much in the way of any snow in any particular area here. And that'll continue to push northward Wednesday night and Thursday. As for temperatures today, 40 degrees at Skagway, 45 down at Annette, about sums it up for the Panhandle in the 40s. Mid to upper 30s here for the North Gulf Coast, and then down into the teens over south central Alaska. Below zero this afternoon across the Copper River Basin areas, and -9 at Fairbanks. I saw a little bit of light snow today. -12 over at Eagle with those winds gusting as high as 30 or 35 miles an hour at times. -45 Arctic Village, the cold spot this afternoon. And Fort Yukon came up from a low of about -53 for the state's low this morning. Up along the Arctic coast, 20 to 25 below, a little milder here over at Kaktovik, as well as off to the west in that 15 to 20 below range over the northwest part of the state, but just a little below zero here across the Seward Peninsula areas. McGrath had -6, while Galena 24 below. Much milder to the southwest. You can see Bethel there up to 31 at 4 p.m. A little bit of snow has come in since then, back down the upper 20s, but right along the coastline near zero from Unalakleet to St. Michael all the way down to Macoriac, up to 35 degrees where they had some southeast winds at Cape Newenham, and temperatures ranged from 19 at Koliganek over to 31 at King Salmon, 34 at Kodiak with some half-mile visibilities in snow and fog. Otherwise, lower to mid-30s here along the Alaska Peninsula. 36, again, some sunshine this afternoon or during the day out at Unalaska as well as Nikolsky. Cooler as you head out west towards Shimya. And the lows for tonight into the -40s here up over the northeast interior, the below zero. The 0-degree isotherm again extending through the Tanana Valley right down to along and north or northwest of the Kuskokwim River. 19, the forecast low for the Pribilofs, well below zero across the northern Bering Sea into the northwest, and 20s down here to the south, 30s for the Panhandle, and lower 30s or upper 20s for the Aleutians. And for tomorrow, highs looking like this, mid to upper 30s here for the peninsula and Kodiak Island, 40s there for the southeast coast, lower to mid 40s. Cooler here, but the coldest temperatures again will be north and west of the mountain range, and in this case the Kuskokwim mountain ranges, again 0 and below to the west, and above 0 here to the east. So it'll be a little bit of warming, but most areas still staying below the freezing mark here, except right along the coastline. For flying weather, look for good IFR here from the Kenai Peninsula across Prince William Sound, all of the North Gulf Coast and into the Panhandle, and then beginning to improve here from the west-southwest throughout the day and into the afternoon. An area of VFR right up Cook Inlet, and then lower conditions up along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and some possible IFR conditions even over those north and northwest portions of the Copper River Basin. Pretty good here in the interior, some leftover marginal VFR likely there over the west and west central or north central interior. IFR possible with that next trough spreading some lower clouds and fog into the western Arctic coast. Areas of IFR likely here out over the Bering Sea and down along the Pacific side of the peninsula, and then out over the Aleutians in the heavier snow showers. For passes, Anatuvik again VFR as well as Adigan, both entrances VFR once again tomorrow. And Lake Clark and Merrill. Lake Clark IFR gradually becoming marginal. We'll look for things to improve, at least in that pass as the afternoon progresses. Otherwise, Merrill probably looking at kind of an IFR day right through the pass. And for Rainy, expect IFR through that mountain pass as well. Windy though, a little better, occasionally marginal. Isabel, occasionally marginal, but Mentasta, a lot more optimistic, VFR, but chance of some marginal stuff on the south side. Tanita, marginal VFR becoming IFR, and Portage looks IFR to low IFR. Chilkoot and White, both IFR. For the freezing levels, cold out here in the west, the surface again late tonight, early tomorrow morning, south of the Aleutians. Northeast, right up along the coastline at the surface, and then a big push of warmer air there with that front gradually edging eastward, and the strong southerly winds in advance of that pulling 6,000 to 8,000 foot levels or more here right over the southern southeast coast. For the icing threats to go along with that deep moisture layer, below 15,000 feet, possibly seeing some areas of moderate rime icing, below 11,000 feet here over south central Alaska, extending back to the west into the Kuskokwim Valley. And then just some spotty stuff up to the north and a few spotty areas out here over the Aleutians. Strong jet coming across the Pacific off Japan there up to 200 knots. Takes a turn to the northeast right up to the southeast coast tomorrow. Not much flow at this level through the interior, and the Arctic jet still hanging on to the North Slope, Arctic coast, and even the Brooks Range areas. 9,000 foot winds, couple of low centers, one here over the southwest interior, and that next one edging its way northeastward from Kodiak tomorrow to about this position. Pretty strong winds out in advance of that, 50 to 60 knots along the Gulf of Alaska, and 45 to 55 knots blowing into the Panhandle, much lighter up over the central interior. Northerlies again continuing through the strait up to 35 knots. Not much in the way of wind out over the Aleutians and Bering Sea in the 20 to 30 knot range. And 3,000 foot winds looking like this, much similar. 45 knots across Kodiak, southwest to northeast, 35 to 40 knots into the Panhandle. And southerlies at about 25 coming up into the Copper River Basin. And otherwise light variable winds here through the interior, southwest 20, maybe on the Arctic coast up there. And southeast winds here for the Fox Islands up into the south central Bering Sea areas, and lighter in and around this low center. As far as turbulence goes, not much out here over the Aleutians. The roughest will just be some areas of light to moderate chop there for smaller aircraft for Adak and Atka. Moderate chop from Nunivak Island right up through the Bering Strait, taking off to the northwest. Could be pretty smooth here over the interior. Kodiak Island, occasional moderate chop. That extends across the Gulf of Alaska and actually from eastern Prince William Sound down across the entire Panhandle to the Queen Charlottes. And after hangar flying, I'll return with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Our guest this evening is Will Johnson. Will is a very experienced pilot who's been flying for almost 50 years. He's flown DC-4s, Otters, Beavers, Cessna 206, Seneca, Navajo, Caravan, and I'm probably leaving out some, but Will is here. He actually lives in Fairbanks, and I've been trying for months to get him on the show. Actually, I think it's more like years, but well, I really appreciate your efforts to try and come down. And how was the weather today?
It was beautiful.
We have a special topic tonight, and Will's going to talk about, but I want to get to that in a minute. But first I want to talk about a phrase you use called creative dispatch. You mentioned that you have a bunch of amphib time, but not much straight float times. Let's start there.
Well, the beauty of the amphib is it can land on the airport. So rather than make a float plane, make a long distance trip to fly out to the water, we try to station the float plane at an airport near our water destination and then use land planes to shuttle the passengers back and forth. So the float plane does a whole bunch of little short trips.
A lot more flexible.
Yes.
Well, you have over 20,000 hours and probably a lot of experiences to share. But what I'd like to do this evening is spend some time talking about something that happened last August. Can you describe the engine failure you had?
Well, I was fortunately just had dropped off my passengers, was flying back to pick up another load of passengers, and very suddenly, without the slightest warning, my engine quit producing power. And it was curious for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't feel the drag that you would feel if you just suddenly pulled back the power on a big engine with a constant speed prop. And the other thing is that the engine made a loud kind of clicking sound. And I thought about it at the time and thought, gee, this sounds like the sound we'd get when we clipped playing cards on our bicycles when we were kids. And use clothespins, and we'd convert our bicycles to motorcycles. And so it had that curious sound, and at first I didn't really believe that anything could be seriously wrong. There's a bit of a disbelief goes through there. And I thought, well, surely this isn't really happening. And I kind of realized that it was happening, and I tried a few simple things that would have worked under a simpler situation. I switched tanks and played with the mags and mixture and a few things, and the engine didn't even make the slightest hint that it might want to run, not even a slightest change in sound. So then I thought, well, gee, I better figure out a landing. And of course, when I looked around in the area I was in, there's just nothing but trees. And it is something I think about when I fly over this country. Where would I land if I had to put down? And unfortunately, there just wasn't a good place. But I've always had a faith that if you kept the plane under control, that you'd still be able to make a safe landing and walk away from it. And I've seen that many, many times, and I've told my students that, but I've never gotten to actually experience it, so I wasn't speaking from firsthand knowledge. So I wasted more time thinking about, gee, I've got to make this engine run. It just has to run, because otherwise I'm going to mess up this airplane. And then I had a kind of a final thought, well, I'm going to mess up my bones if I don't forget about this engine and just do a good job of landing. So I turned up the ridge. I didn't want to land downhill. I didn't want to land across the valleys. And that way it gave me a kind of a flat place to land in an area where the trees weren't terribly thick. They were scrub, black spruce, kind of stunted, probably the tallest 20, 25 feet. So that's what I ended up using to land.
So were you up by McGrath?
We were west of McGrath. It's an area I'd flown in quite a bit, and fortunately the weather was improving, and actually had the weather not improved, I had a lower route that I'd flown on my first trip, and had I landed out there I would have been really, really far from help. But in this case I had a road within about 3 miles. So as soon as the dust settled, so to speak, I was thinking about walking out to that road. And fortunately I got some rather incredible help from the local Fish and Wildlife trooper, who was able to fly over, talk to me on the radio, and scope out a good place to walk to safety and confirm that what I thought I was going to do was in fact going to work.
So, Will, we've run out of time, which I knew was going to happen, but we're going to have you back probably at least once, if not twice, because I want to talk about a couple things. I want to talk about more about the parameters, altitude, airspeed, where your final touchdown, and also a little bit from a CFI perspective on the steps you took. So if you're good with it, we'll get you on Friday, and we'll continue your story.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program, and until next time, fly safe.
Well, gales right out of the south tomorrow here along the central and south coast. Actually, these ones will be coming up this evening, and then sort of hanging on throughout the night and into tomorrow, beginning to drop back here to the north. A little uncertainty in these northern areas tomorrow, that developing low center taking off to the east here. Looks like it'll swing around to the south again, the Lynn Canal, but if it slides a little bit farther to the south, then it'll be a little lighter and more variable up here, but still looks like some gales even in over the central and southern inside waters. Lighter winds on tap for Wednesday, but trending to increase again in the afternoon up to small craft advisories in some areas. And for the coast here, southwest 20 to 25 knots, Prince William Sound, southeast 15. Pretty light wind day coming up for Cook Inlet tomorrow, all the way down in Kamishak Bay. Southwest 20 to 30 knots for Kodiak. And then for Wednesday, southeast winds here all along the coast, 25 knots with the small craft advisories back down along Kodiak Island. But Shelikof Strait just east of 15. Northeast winds through the inlet, Kenai on southward up to 25 knots, more of an easterly direction, especially coming out of Turnagain Arm, 20 knots with higher gusts. For Bristol Bay, variable winds tomorrow at about 10, light and variable conditions. Northeast here, 15 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, west 15. On the Pacific side, looks like some small craft advisory southwesterlies there from Sitkinak to Chignik. And then those will turn southeast at about the same speed on Wednesday. Northeast winds 20 to 30 knots here, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, and those small craft advisories will extend right up and cover all of Bristol Bay. For the Aleutians, northeast winds on the east side here, 15 to 25 knots for most of the Fox Islands on Alaska Dutch Harbor. Easterlies for Adak and Atka, then turning northeast, and then eventually north to 25 for the Shimiatu area. And then for Wednesday, lighter winds here, north-northeast, 15 knots, and then 20 to 35 knots, 20 knotters here for the central Aleutians, 30 to 35 knots from the northeast for the Fox Islands. And for the Bering Sea, northerlies to northeasterlies, 20 to 25 knots tomorrow, higher gusts up here, well actually up toward the Bering Strait will be the higher gusts, otherwise about these speeds. And then for Wednesday, heavy freezing spray occurring here all across this area down into the Pribilost, back up to the north where the ice edge is. Northeasterlies everywhere, 25 to 30 knots, so small craft and brisk wind advisories out for just about everywhere. And then for Tuesday, kind of light and variable here on the eastern Arctic coast to east at 15, southwest 15 for the west side, and then northwesterlies at 20 for the Chukchi Sea. And the outlook for Wednesday, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots for the entire stretch of the west side here, and westerlies at about 15, starting out northwest here for the central coast. Westerlies 15 knots, picking up in velocity as you head east there. And you could be back into that 25 or 30 knot gust range from the west there over towards the far east end, especially around Kaktovik, Barter Island, and those locations. For tonight, I've got a pretty fierce low pressure area coming up toward Kodiak Island, but the front appears to already be pressing up toward the North Gulf Coast, and rain, winter storm warning out for the higher elevations of the northern panhandle, and areas of snow here across the southern interior areas and south of the Alaska Range. Looks dry here through the Tanana Valley with those downsloping winds, occasionally gusty Delta Junction, staying that way around Eagle. This leftover band of moisture keeping some light snow in over the north central interior areas, dry over the Arctic coast, snow showers in the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And then for tomorrow, we've got one low center coming up and increasing the snow again across south central Alaska. This other one developing and bringing possible strong wind conditions in across the southeast coast there. But once the front pushes through, should at least start to diminish the southwest winds there slowly, with rain changing to showers. And the outlook for Wednesday, that storm's gone. Another one already coming up to the coast again with an increasing wind and rain situation back into Kodiak Island, eventually spreading northward.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.